If you have ever been to AA, you may hear people talk about how they hit bottom. Bottoms are deep and emotional and traumatic experiences that impels one to become sober. In AA, they call it incomprehensible demoralization. It is usually ushered in by something like the loss of a loved one, a near-death overdose, or extreme financial hardship. There are scientific reasons for these bottoms. Experiences that are either very frightening or terrifying creates an emotional memory, which is a memory that is permanently stamped on the brain. This memory overrides the normal learning process, otherwise known as long-term potentiation. What this means is that the memory is easier recalled than others and may even stamp out other memories. The limbic system, the same one that is activated by drugs, is now your friend. It is now awakened and takes a hard look inward at primary survival. The people that hit bottom start to view addiction in a whole new light. The psychological switch results in addicts finding a moment of clarity, as AA puts it. In some cases, they realize that they must get sober or die. But do you have to experience this bottom or substantial losses from your addiction in order to get sober? Addiction is like a game of diminishing returns. You have an increasing desire for a diminishing pleasure. There is no winning. But what if we could realize that addiction wasn't an option before you undergo substantial loss? Fact is, we use this construct a lot, but don't even realize it. Imagine that you are a male driving down a busy road. You pass by what you believe an attractive female walking on the sidewalk. Naturally, this female has grabbed your attention. You start to stare. The reason you stare is because your brain has begun to flood with dopamine. The visual stimuli, the sight of the woman, sends a message down to the amygdala in the limbic region, and your body has actually begun the initial stage, getting it ready for sex. In the first few seconds of seeing this female, you may not consciously notice that you are staring. You don't notice it because it is automatic and it works at a subconscious level. This same subconscious limbic system reveals itself when you step outside in freezing temperatures and your body begins to shiver. It also controls the beating of your heart. You do not consciously control these things, they just happen. But eventually you come to your senses. When this happens, the decision-making frontal lobe part of the brain steps in and sends a strong signal back down to the limbic region and says focus on the road. This whole process can happen within a few seconds. But what you, as the man in this scenario, may not fully realize is that your brain has begun the process of preparing you for sex. It is biologically wired within our brains and nervous system at a subconscious level to increase in sexual responses at the sight of a potential partner. This begins with dopamine flooding the brain. This same process happens to those addicted to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, or pornography. Science has shown that at the sight of a needle to an addict, or an empty beer bottle to an alcoholic, or a cigarette pack to a smoker, or a partially nude woman to basically any man, will spike dopamine in the brain. From there, the limbic system tries to dominate and hijack the brain, which dampens the planning and reasoning centers. One researcher found that addicts even reported tasting their drug in the back of their throats when triggered. This is because our somewhat strange brain starts to mimic our drug of choice and gives us a primer. It is like taking a small piece of the drug itself. It is when we know that our drug of choice is available and the opportunity exists that the mind becomes preoccupied on using. When you no longer make addiction an option in your life, you act as if it doesn't exist. You start to overcome it in a less worried way. You forget about it and move on. You don't struggle every day fighting urges, and you won't be trying so hard to overcome anything. You may even stay up all night just because you couldn't sleep well, but not because you needed a drink.